Hi there, Jesse here with eTrailer. Today we'll be taking a look at and I'll show you how to install the Universal Trailer Brake Wiring Kit, or as we call it, the ETBC7, on our 2024 Nissan Pathfinder. You'll see we have a 7-way here, and also you will still retain your 4-pole wiring, which is really nice. So depending on if you have multiple trailers or you're thinking about switching back and forth at all, you still have the ability to use either the 4-pole or the 7-way wiring. The main reason why our neighbors are installing this ETBC7 kit on their vehicles is because their trailers have brakes and their vehicle doesn't have a factory way to run a brake controller. For example, our neighbor today is towing a small dovetail camper which has trailer brakes, and they decided to go with this Tekonsha P3 Prodigy, and in order to get this installed, they needed the ETBC7 kit installed also. That's really all there is to it. It's just something that when you need it, you need it. In this case, our neighbor needed a way to run their brake controller, and they needed the ETBC7. As far as the install goes, it is a pretty lengthy process. You do have to run some wires all the way up to the front of the vehicle and then inside the vehicle. So if it's not something you're looking to do yourself, maybe you don't have the time, the space, or the tools to do so, feel free to check out our dealer locator. However, if you are looking to get this set up yourself, then follow along and I'll show you how we set up ours. Also, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, or you just want to show us some pictures of what you're hauling with your Pathfinder, then feel free to let us know. The first part of our installation is really just finding a good mounting point for our 7-way and 4-pole to be. With the spare having to go up here, there's not really a lot of options as far as mounting to the hitch. So this is about the best I could come up with. There was a couple push pins here. I popped this one out, replaced that push pin with a screw and a nut on top. For the second hole, I used a self-tapper. That's nice solid plastic there, so that's sturdy enough for me. But I'll just go through our wiring real quick. Our white wire with the ring terminal, that's a ground. Once I get everything kind of routed up, I'll be able to use a self-tapper and get that into the body. Our 4-pole is actually going to plug in to our factory 4-pole, which is right here. I'll do that right now. Just pop that cap off, and for the cap I'll actually just cut it off since we won't be using it. And take our 4-pole wiring, plug it in. I'll cut this one off too. I'll end up coming through with some electrical tape, just cleaning that up and making sure the connection stays secure. For our yellow wire, we're actually not going to use that, so I'll end up kind of folding it back and taping it around our loom there. Blue wire, that's for our brake controller. The black wire will be for power. These both have butt connectors on them already. I'm actually going to cut these off and replace them with heat shrink butt connectors, just because this is going to be outside. Those heat shrink butt connectors will keep those safe from any corrosion or debris. But once I get those cut off and our butt connectors added on, I'll bring out our duplex wiring and connect those. Those two wires are going to run to the front of the vehicle. While I'm connecting these wires, I might as well just show you real quick how to make a connection. All of our connections are essentially going to be the same way as far as the butt connectors go. You're just going to strip off the end of your wire and twist your wire. Then take your butt connector. You'll see I'm going to connect the blue to the white and the black to the black. It's just going to make it a little easier. But just slide your wire into the end of the butt connector. And then grab your crimpers. Make sure that wire stays in there. And squeeze it down. Give it a little pull, make sure it's not loose at all, and then I'll come back through with a heat gun and shrink the ends of these up. For our ground, I'm just going to pull it up behind our hitch here and get our ring terminal self-tapped into the frame. You'll see I already drilled a pilot hole. This metal's pretty thick, so that will help. But screw that down and make sure that's tight. I ran our duplex up to the front. I'll just quickly overview the route that I took. We just went up here. I zip tied it onto this wiring harness. We're really trying to stay away from any hotter moving parts, so watch out for the suspension components. I zip tied it up above the control arm. And it comes down here. I went along the side of the fuel tank. And once I got to this point, I had to take down a big panel. It's just a series of 10mm bolts, but once I got this out of the way, I was easily able to route our wires up here. And once I got to this point, we're ready to feed it up into the engine bay. So what I'll do is feed a piece of airline tubing down. I'll tie the end of our duplex to it and then pull it up from there. Once you have your wires fished up into the engine bay, make sure you are aware of where the battery is. It's on the driver's side right here. Next step will be to mount our circuit breakers. Just find somewhere where it's not going to interfere with anything and we'll be able to run wires and not have to worry about maybe going over a fuse box or anything like that. With our brake controller, we'll be using a 30 amp fuse. It gives us the option of either 20 to 30, and the kit includes both, so I just went on the high end with the 30 amp. Then our 40 amp circuit breaker is for our ETBC7 kit. So we'll be wiring our black wire into the silver post on that, and similar to the butt connector connection, but first just make sure you have enough slack, so where I'm going to plan on routing my wire and keeping it out of the way, so I'll give myself just a little bit of slack to work with. Cut it and hold on to the rest of the black wire. We'll be using that. Let's get that cut and stripped. For our ring terminals, for the circuit breaker connection, you'll be using these smaller ones like this. These larger ones will be for our battery connection, so just keep that in mind. This one's going to the circuit breaker, so I'll just crimp that down. And this is going to go to our silver post. The copper post is going to be going to our battery. So let's take this nut off. Slide our ring terminal over. Tighten it down. Then with our slack on the black wire, just kind of plan out your route from that circuit breaker to our battery, then cut that off. And that's going to be the same way we connected that, just 2 ring terminals. Just remember the larger ring terminal is for the battery. For our brake controller circuit breaker, what we'll do is take that slack we had, route enough to where you can get to the battery, then cut it. And so hopefully this looks like it should be enough wire to connect to our silver post here and route into the passenger area of the car. But we're also going to route our white wire in there. So I'll find a grommet and then I'll show you how that process goes. But our silver post on our brake controller circuit breaker is going to feed into the car with the white wire. Once we have all of our wires figured out for our circuit breakers, we're not going to make our battery connection quite yet. We'll wait until we have all of our connections made. That'll be our last step. So here's hopefully a better look at the grommet that I'm using to get into the passenger area. I just had to poke a hole through the rubber grommet and then fed some airline tubing, taped our wires up and pulled it through. So now we're ready to start wiring on the inside of the vehicle. Here's our 2 wires that I ran to the inside of the vehicle. They're pretty long, so I'll probably cut them about right there. But I'll just go over our wiring real quick. Our white wire here, this is a ground, so I'll end up probably extending it out so I can reach maybe a factory ground or a piece of metal that I can use a ring terminal and connect that to. I'll show you that once I get that done. our red wire here, this is going to connect to our vehicle's brake light switch, which there's actually a factory tow plug here. And what I'll do is take the blue wire, which I know is the brake light signal on that, and I'll butt connect this into that. Our black wire will connect to our black wire that we pulled through. That's just for our 12-volt power. And the blue wire will connect to our white wire, which, if you remember, was originally blue in the back of the vehicle, going to be our signal from our 7-pole in the back. Now we need to figure out a good place to mount our brake controller. So I've already taken this kick panel down. All you'll have to do is kind of pull this side out, and then a bunch of clips hold it in. Then just go through and unplug all of the plugs that are holding it together from there. But I took that down just to get our wiring situated. But our brake controller right here, not a lot of good spots inside the Pathfinder. I think if I put it on the right side, then you'll be hitting it with your knee while you're driving. So I'd rather have it over here. So I'll just kind of mock that up, and you can make some marks there, but it's kind of obvious where I'm going to have mine located. And now I'll take this over to our workbench and get to working on mounting it. Take our bracket for our brake controller and the included screws. Try to get this as straight as possible. Put 2 screws in there. Now for this is the carrier for our brake controller, so it just kind of clicks into place, and then we'll put 2 more screws in the side of that. Now that we know where our brake controller will be mounted, we can get our ground set up. So just find a nice solid piece of metal. I mounted ours right here. I just crimped a ring terminal on and self-tapered it to this metal here. And then for our brake light wire, it was actually the pink wire on our trailer wiring harness. And what I actually did was I just went straight off the brake switch, which I can show you where it's located in a second. And all I did was quarter turn, pulled our brake switch out, and then I was able to get access to the pink wire on that, and I butt connected our red wire into that. Here's a better look at our brake light switch. I just took it, quarter turned it, and I was able to pull it out and access that pink wire that's located on the back. You can see I butt connected into that. Now we just need to tuck all of our wires up out of the way, make sure they're not in the way of the brake pedal or anything like that, or your feet, and get your panel reinstalled. We can slide our brake controller into place for now, and for now we'll leave it unplugged. We still have those 2 connections to make on the battery and the engine bay. Come to our positive post here, and we'll need to remove this 10mm bolt. Take that off, and we'll slide our 2 ring terminals. Actually, just slide them onto the bolt, then try to get that reinstalled and tighten it down. Now that we have power hooked up, we've hooked up to a trailer. You can see it's detecting that trailer, and when I hit the manual override, we have voltage, so that means everything's working as it should. Otherwise, that's going to do it for our look at and installation of the ETBC7 Universal Trailer Wiring Kit on our 2024 Nissan Pathfinder.